Tonight, when you look down at your hand, you are seeing an ancient pattern. 5 fingers, not 4, not 6. 5. It feels so ordinary that your brain barely notices, but your hand is carrying a blueprint that is hundreds of millions of years old. And that blueprint is not uniquely human. Your fingers belong to a much bigger family. The same basic pattern appears in bats, whales, lizards, frogs, and even animals that look nothing like you. So why 5? Why did evolution keep returning to this number? The answer begins in water. Roughly 370 million years ago, strange fish began exploring shallow environments. Their fins were changing. Inside those fins were bones. And those bones were becoming more organised. Some ancient fish had surprisingly complex skeletons inside their fins. Scientists studying fossils like Tiktaalik have found structures resembling the early architecture of limbs. Tiktaalik lived around 375 million years ago. It had fins. But those fins contained bones that resemble parts of our own arms, the humerus, the radius, the ulna. That sounds impossible. A fish had the beginnings of your arm, but evolution was not trying to build a human. It was solving a completely different problem. How do you support a body in shallow water? How do you push against mud? How do you move through a world that is no longer entirely aquatic? The answer was the limb. And the limb changed everything. Over millions of years, those early structures became stronger. Joints became more flexible. Bones became more specialized. Fins became limbs. And eventually limbs developed digits. But here is where the story becomes strange. Early 4-legged animals did not always have 5 digits. Some had more. A lot more. Scientists have found ancient tetrapods with 6, 7, and even 8 digits. So 5 was not inevitable. Evolution experimented. It tried different solutions. Some worked, some disappeared, some left no descendants. Then, somewhere along the evolutionary road, 5 digits became the dominant pattern. This is called pentadactyly. It means having a limb with 5 digits, and it became one of the great recurring designs of vertebrate evolution. Your hand is one version, a bat wing is another, a whale flipper is another, a frog foot is another. The shapes are wildly different. The underlying architecture is remarkably similar. So what happened? Why did 5 survive? The simplest answer is that evolution inherited a successful design. Once a basic body plan becomes established, changing it can be difficult. Imagine building a house. If you want to move one wall, you may have to move everything connected to it. Evolution faces a similar problem. Genes do not operate in isolation. They interact. Development unfolds through networks of biological instructions. Changing one part can affect many others. So once 5-digit limbs became common, evolution had a strong reason to modify them, rather than completely redesign them. But that still leaves a mystery. Why did 5 become so successful in the first place? Scientists have proposed several explanations. One possibility involves biomechanics. A limb needs to balance strength, flexibility, and control. Too many digits can create extra complexity. Too few can limit movement. 5 may have offered a useful compromise, but there is no single universal answer. Evolution is rarely that tidy. The fossil record suggests that the transition to 5 digits happened through a complicated period of experimentation. Different animals evolved different numbers. Some lineages kept more than 5. Others reduced the number. Horses eventually evolved a single dominant toe. Birds transformed their hands into highly specialized structures. Whales stretched their digits into flippers. And bats turned their fingers into the framework of wings. Yet underneath all those transformations, the ancient limb blueprint remained recognizable. This is one of the strangest facts about evolution. Evolution does not always invent something new. Sometimes it takes something old and keeps remodeling it. Your hand is not a fresh design. It is a modification of a structure that existed long before humans. The same bones appear again and again. 1 upper arm bone, 2 forearm bones, then wrist bones, then digits. The proportions change, the functions change, the animals change, but the underlying pattern survives. Why would evolution keep such an old blueprint for so long? Because evolution is not an engineer starting with a blank sheet. It is more like a repair team working inside an ancient building. Every new feature has to be built on top of something that already exists. That is why your arm contains echoes of a fish, your fingers contain echoes of ancient four-legged animals, and your entire skeleton carries evidence of a history you never experienced. But there is another twist. The five-finger pattern is not perfectly fixed. Humans sometimes develop extra fingers. This condition is called polydactyly. It can happen when changes affect the biological signals that guide limb development. One important system involves a signaling molecule called sonic hedgehog. Despite its unusual name, sonic hedgehog is a real protein involved in development. Researchers have discovered that changing its signaling can alter how digits form. This tells us something extraordinary. The number of fingers is not simply written as a fixed command. It emerges from a complex developmental process. Your hand was built through a sequence of biological instructions. Signals travelled through developing tissue, cells responded, patterns formed, digits separated, and eventually you had 5 fingers. Before you were born, your hands were already following an ancient developmental program. The same broad program has been modified across countless species. A bat uses it to build wings. A whale uses it to build flippers. You use it to hold a phone. The structure changed. The history remained. But why do we care about this? Because your fingers reveal something important about evolution. You are not separate from the natural world. You are a variation of it. The bones in your hand connect you to animals that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. The same evolutionary story connects your wrist to a whale's flipper, your thumb to a bat's wing, your fingers to the limbs of creatures that walked onto land long before humans existed. Look at your hand again, 5 fingers. Each one seems ordinary, but each one is evidence. Evidence that evolution rarely throws everything away. It keeps what works, it reshapes it, it repurposes it, and sometimes it carries an ancient solution into a completely new world. Your hand was never designed specifically for you. It was inherited, modified, reused, and passed forward through an unimaginably long chain of life. So the next time you spread your fingers, remember what you are really looking at, not 5 separate fingers. One ancient evolutionary story, written in bone. Your hand is not a perfect design created from scratch. It is a fossil that still moves.